Ever wonder why your old blackfish spots just aren't producing anymore? Well, a rare and new study might have the answer for you, and it's not what you might expect. So in this video, I'll show you the key findings of the study and how to use these findings to help you find and catch more fish, and I'll compare the science to what top captains are actually seeing out there on the water. Now, I always like to give credit where credit is due, and the information shared in this video comes from these most recent scientific studies with the most interesting results coming from Ryan, Edward, and Jeff within these years of data regarding blackfish movement. As the development of offshore wind farms in New England continues, there is rising concern that blackfish seasonal spawning migrations from traditionally thought deeper offshore waters to shallow inshore waters is disrupted by new offshore and inshore structures like wind turbines. So to conduct this study, the team tagged 100 fish that would cover Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Long Island, and New Jersey waters. Telemetry studies on fish are actually quite common. However, this study is different, as not much in the form of recent scientific research is available regarding blackfish. And few studies that have been done have revealed some quite interesting results. For example, one such recent quote-unquote study on blackfish from 2020 revealed that Cape Cod blackfish are actually different species from southern blackfish, and the two stocks need to be managed completely differently. Now, during multiple years of this study, the sea bass population was tracked fairly predictably as the fish moved great distances throughout the 4 states to and from offshore locations to inshore breeding grounds. Black sea bass not only migrated inshore to Nantucket Sound, but also to areas of Rhode Island, Long Island, and New Jersey. According to the study, one black sea bass was tagged in an offshore wind area south of Cape Cod in October and later was detected in an offshore wind area in New Jersey in April. Then by June, it had made its way back to Nantucket Sound, then was later found in the exact same area it was originally tagged in September earlier that year. Now, that is some pretty impressive movements from these fish. And this also suggests that these fish don't only move offshore to inshore locations horizontally, but swim great distances up and down the East Coast, finding a variety of inshore and offshore locations. The blackfish, on the other hand, proved to be more mysterious in their movements or lack of movements, and were shown to be quite the homebodies. Every single fish detected and monitored throughout the entire study was found at the same place of its original tagging. This to me is a fascinating finding because it seems to indicate that these blackfish are solely residential fish on their own pieces of structure, whether that be a rock pile or a wreck. Studies conducted in the 90s and early 2000s on blackfish reproduction by the National Marine Fisheries Service were conducted and based on seasonal locations of blackfish eggs. Findings included that in Maryland and Virginia, the highest concentration of eggs were within the inshore waters in May, and the majority of blackfish eggs collected in New Jersey followed a similar time frame within its various bays and estuary ecosystems. The theory developed from this was that blackfish will move from offshore waters to inshore estuaries and nearshore waters to lay their eggs in underwater vegetation. Narragansett Bay in New Jersey was a primary study area for the collection of large amounts of eggs. It was noted, however, that offshore eggs were also collected within offshore continental shelf waters. Now, the key here is that obviously less was known of these eggs since they were far offshore and there was limited access to these eggs via the scientists. Now, with that in consideration, the main outcome of the study was still that blackfish move from offshore locations to inshore locations to breed. However, that limitation of offshore presence of humans and scientists is definitely something we need to take into consideration. One thing that is scientifically proven is that these fish are slow growing and take a long time to reach sexual maturity, which is not a good recipe for overfishing. Now, if you take a look at the chart constructed by New Jersey Fish and Wildlife, you can see that a 22-inch blackfish could well be over 20 years old. Larger fish can easily be 30 to 40 years old. And females also grow slower and reach maturity far later than males do. To add complication to overfishing stats, further studies from the National Marine Fisheries Service show that large female blackfish produce considerably more viable eggs than smaller female blackfish. Combining the slow growth rates of these fish, slow maturity rates, and seemingly them being homebodies, and you could quickly see how these fish populations are very easily going to be impacted by overfishing. The other stat to keep in mind here is that 90% of the blackfish harvest comes from recreational fishing, not commercial fishing. So those arguments that stop commercial fishing, you're good to go, is just false, because the overfishing of these fish is 90% coming from recreation. We can now also begin to see why the old-timers' views of blackfishing, being able to catch as many big ones as you want, has dwindled on particular spots, especially on inshore spots where more people have more access, especially given spot lock technology. If the fish reside in these spots and breed in these spots and you remove breeding fish from the spots, then it's absolutely possible that these wrecks or rock piles, especially inshore, will not be able to sustain this fishing pressure, and the residential blackfish population on these spots will essentially be burned out completely. And given the rising popularity of blackfish fishing, well, now we've increased the fishing pressure, so we're going from bad to worse. Now let's take a look if some of these findings match up with what myself and other professionals out there are seeing out there on the water day by day and year by year. First, let's address if blackfish are solely residential in the structures that they live. Now, the study results of the New England Aquariums Fisheries Science and Emerging Technologies team do not suggest that blackfish don't move wreck to wreck, but more and more science studies seem to show more and more data that blackfish do not move from their wrecks or rock piles as much as people think. But there is more and more data that seem to back up this statement that you have more and more residential inshore and residential offshore fish. However, after years of professional fishing and discussing this with other professional fishermen as well, the truth about whether blackfish move or don't move is probably somewhere in the middle. Some blackfish captains I know in Maryland believe that blackfish actually use the wrecks or rock pile structures as navigation points while they travel. So traveling inshore, some fish will stop wreck by wreck until they reach their desired water, and some will simply just get comfortable and stay on one wreck or rock pile for extended periods of time. One thing is for sure, we have known for a very long time that these fish grow slowly and reproduce slowly. So self-regulation of our fisheries, far beyond what legal regulations are, is a must in almost every fishery. The fact is, fishery regs are generally speaking quite hard to pass due to all the competing interests and lobbyists and money and interests involved with state and federal regulations. However, education among anglers can prove far more useful. Many anglers out there refuse to keep any fish over 8 pounds and throw all the large females back regardless of their size. Also, self-regulating catch rates on certain spots and letting spots rest is a key component to sustainment of this fishery. Often, many anglers out there do not fish to their bag limits. The idea of a successful fishing trip being maxing out on your fish or your bag limit should absolutely be a thing of the past, especially regarding slow-growing, slow-reproducing species like blackfish. Now, following these good fishing practices for the sustainment of these blackfish are going to be key for us to enjoy these fish for a long time to come. Now, no matter if the science shows that blackfish are migratory or residential, your fishing success relies solely on your ability to actually find these fish and these fishing locations. So to make your life easier, I actually made this free fish finding tool that you could download below. I use it all the time and I love it. And it'll give you spot dissections of both contour lines as well as satellite imagery to help you find these fish. It'll give you accurate weather and even adjust your tactics depending on the current weather for the spot that you're looking at. It's a great tool. It's helped hundreds of my clients catch more fish. Again, I'll leave it linked down below. It's totally free and totally up to you. Now, this scientific research is incredibly valuable for learning this fishery and also learning how to preserve this fishery. But click on this video right here if you want to go deeper into the exact tactics that you need to use to actually catch these fish once you locate them and once you get on ideal fishing spots. All right, fish lads, go ahead and check that out. I know it'll help you catch more blackfish. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you out there on the water.